Hello, everyone. This is a introduction into a new series where I'm going to be teaching you guys kind of a progression on how to, understand yourself, uh, learn, grow, change. Pretty much all the things that I think are important in progression in your life. So if that sounds interesting to you, stick around for a couple minutes. Um, so I wrote some notes. So I'm going to break this down. This first, I guess, this first video, the goal is to figure out who you are, like right in the moment, right now. And so I'm going to call this surveying. We're going to be surveying you. You can either get paper or you can, type on your computer, whatever it is. Open up a notebook document, or I don't know. Just do something. You could just sit here and listen. That's fine. But the idea behind this is we can't understand if we don't know where our starting point is, who we are, like honestly, at a base level, then it's going to be impossible to be able to make accurate judgments moving forward to figure out how to improve yourself. Um, so I'm going to use an analogy because I love analogies. I'm going to use an analogy here on we're going to be pretending that we're going to be building a house. In order to build a house, we first have to pick the land. In this case, the land is you. You are the land. And up until this point, whether you're, 5 or 500 years old, I know I'm being ridiculous, but no matter how old you are or how young you are, we all have this kind of terrain within us that basically make up who we are. As we grow older, the terrain gets more advanced and varied, and there are structures and all sorts of stuff that pop up there. Some people use this terrain in a more deliberate manner where they plan things out, and then others kind of wander around without really thinking about structure. They just kind of do stuff as they see fit. So it is my job in this small little video to be able to explain how to figure out what's on the land right now. So I've broken it up into 3 sections of surveying. We're not building anything right now. We're not changing anything. We're just trying to figure out what's there. So we have the surface level, which consists of okay, is there any actual buildings? Are there trees? Is there any animals? Structures, wildlife, all of that stuff. Because if you don't know what's on the surface, you may not even be able to build the structure you want because maybe you don't have enough space or you're going to disrupt habitats, whatever, right? So that's the surface level. Then you have the ground level, which is the surface top soil. And this consists, again, of what is the composition of the soil? What's it made of? Are there any seeds planted? What are the kinds of things that are there? And I kind of forgot to mention, so for surface layer is basically anything you could think of, and I have a list, so I'll get to it in a second, but I'm trying to give you a brief summary. So the surface layer, this is all stuff like where you live, your body, what types of education you've gotten, what type of job you have. It's all very surface level stuff that you'd probably tell like a date or you'd put on a resume. So, so that's surface level. Ground level is a bit more in depth. It has stuff like the types of skills that you've kind of built over time, the talents that you have, stuff like that. But again, it's still top level. You haven't gone deep yet. So that's why it's the ground floor or the ground level. And then underneath it, we got like all the other stuff. And this is where, like, to me, this is the fun stuff. This is underground, and it has things like your habits, your routines, how you perceive yourself, others, how you think, like on a fundamental level, like what is it that like you do when thinking, organizing, like how you collect data, stuff like that. So, and I could go on when it comes to the underground stuff, but I think it's important to just get a brief overview. We're going to start from the surface, and again, feel free to, like, if I talk too fast or whatever, feel free to pause the video, replay it, whatever you need to do. But surface, I would recommend, at a bare minimum, to write as exhaustive as you can. All of this just down somewhere. Again, you could type it, you could pen and paper it. Yeah, you could use your mind to just figure it out, but I think it's helpful to see it. So yeah. So I'm going to start with something really simple, really basic. Location. Where do you live on Earth? Assuming you're on Earth. If you're watching this and you don't live on Earth, okay, wherever it is that you live, right? This is really important because there are a lot of things about your location that we don't think about on a day-to-day. I don't know why I took it off. Okay, anyway. So there's cultural expectations. There's like religious beliefs. There's laws. All of these things impact you, but on a like very subconscious level, because you've grown up, theoretically, you've grown up in this area. Now, if you move a lot, things change. And I think someone who's moved a ton in their childhood and into adulthood, they're going to have a very different perspective on this than someone who's lived in a single place their whole life. So, just take some time, really write down, like, okay, I live here. I live in this house on this street in this like city or town in this state or country, and maybe it's like Providence or whatever it is, right? But on this continent, so it's like these are things where it takes a couple minutes to write it down, but I want you to really think about like what expectations do you have or people have of you? So this could be anything from like maybe you go to school or went to school in a neighborhood where everyone walked to school because it was so close and it was safe enough to just walk without parent supervision. And yeah, you just kind of did the thing. That's going to be very different from living in a place where maybe you're taking a bus or the parents drive you or whatever it is, right? And these are subtle small things, but they all stack up and add up. So I want you to really think about throughout your life the different environments you've been living in. Write them down and write down kind of the expectations that the environment had on you as an individual in that environment. And it doesn't have to be super exhaustive, but like you just write down as much as you think like makes sense, okay? Next is kind of like social expectations. So we have the cultural expectations, we have the religious stuff. Now we're kind of going into like social stuff. Your parents, your family, your extended family. If you have extended family near you, maybe you don't. What are their expectations? What are the things that they've taught you over the years? Do you have your own family? Do you have a significant other? What does the significant other expect from you? What about kids? Do you have kids? Maybe, like, what do your kids expect of you? So it's all of these things, where we go past family and we're talking about like friends, coworkers, strangers, all the social aspects. Write down the things that you perceive in your environment. Because again, these are things that we kind of subconsciously add onto ourselves. So this is why it's important to write it down. So you have that. Possessions, such as like, we're getting into like physical possessions, like car, computer, phone, entertainment. Maybe you have a house. Maybe you own other property. Maybe you don't own anything. Whatever it is. What types of possessions do you have? Also, within the possessions, financial status. This is kind of important because if you're someone who is like a millionaire, your perspective is going to be very different from someone who is homeless. So understanding what your financial status looks like right now is important. Also, what is it that you feel right now you cannot live without? And again, all of this that you're writing down, you never have to show it to anyone. This is for you. This is just for you to figure it out. So after that, we get into like physical body. So with physical body, health status. Do you take any medications? Are you going into like, do you have like surgeries going on? Is there some sort of like medical condition that prevents you from doing certain things? These are all important to just write down. Then activity levels. Do you have any cravings, addictions, any vices? Eating habits. And then also things like your age. This is all stuff that, like, again, it does impact what is possible for you to like feasibly do. So if you're 90, that's gonna impact a lot of like, okay, well, maybe it's not safe for you to do certain things that you could have done when you were 20. And so just understanding that is important. Education, there's kind of like, there's the self-taught route of like, it's kind of unrecognized in a professional manner where it's like, okay, I have these skills. On a job resume, it would be like, I've done this for a couple years. I did this. I have this skill. And it's like you're listing these things, but they're not necessarily a degree. The degree would be more the official schooling that you've gone through. So, did you go to public? Did you go to private? Did you go to a university? How long? All of that stuff. And so it's kind of like figuring out your education and understanding like where you sit on what you know. And I will say self-taught is very important because even skills that you think, or, well, I wouldn't say skills, but I'm saying the knowledge that you've attained, things that maybe you think are not super important, just put it down, because it's important for you to just see where all of your knowledge is coming from. And then we got 2 more left for the surface level. There's the job. When it comes to job, it's like, how long do you do the job? Do you have a job? Do you have multiple jobs? What type of position do you hold? Who do you work for? Do you work for yourself? Do you work for a friend? Do you work for a company? These are things that, again, like in our current society, we're kind of expected to have a job of some kind. Because if we don't, odds are, unless you have a ton of money saved up, you're going to probably be homeless, because that's kind of just how it is. Or you're going to be living maybe with your parents or a family member or something. Maybe it's a loved one. That's fine. But, just being honest with yourself, like what is your current status? And then your love life. So, who's your current partner? Do you have a current partner? Have you ever dated anyone? What's kind of your experience in life with love? What about love that isn't kind of, it's more like familiar love instead of like significant other love? Do you love your family? Like, I know that's, for some people that may be like, well, obviously, but for other people, it's like, no, that's not obvious. Some people just do not like their family for one reason or another. Some maybe feel justified. Some maybe don't feel justified. Doesn't matter. Just what is your current kind of status when it comes to who do you love? And, I guess in general, like, what are your feelings towards people in your life? And then kind of just like, in that same vein, is there people that you can rely on? Are there like friends or family that you're like, oh, this is like a die-hard person that I could go to them and, if I accidentally killed someone, they'd help me bury the body. Like that's the level of friendship we have. Or you could have someone who's like, I wouldn't trust them with $1 bill because I know they'd take it. Like, where are we at with different people? And this is from your perspective. Again, this is all you. This doesn't matter about anyone else. This is for you. Surface level. I know that sounds like a lot, but that is, the surface level is, there's just a lot of different things. Now, once you've done that, we have the next level, which is ground level. And ground level is actually the quickest of the three, because it really boils down to four kind of main things. There's your talents, which I mentioned before. And talents, I mean, you can figure out a talent by how easy it is for you to pick something up. So if you learned how to swim really, really quickly, maybe you have a talent for swimming. You know, it doesn't have to be a physical thing. It could be a mental thing. Maybe you're really good at math. And you always have been good at math. That's a talent. And then skills are things that you've learned over time. So a skill would be, again, something where you've taken the time to learn the thing and then you've become good at it. Now, obviously, they can overlap. So you can have a talent and then you can develop that talent with a skill set to be able to make that talent get accentuated. But it's important to just understand that skills are more of like you building it as opposed to it just naturally being there. And then on kind of a side thing, there's also training. So training is different from skills because when it comes to a skill, it's something you're learning something over time, and that's fine. But when it comes to training, it's like you're focused on doing a specific set of like a routine or something that allows you to progress. So the skill is more like you've already built it, but you built it with the training that you've put yourself through. Whereas the training is, okay, there's something I want to like accomplish or do, so I'm going to go into my training arc and I'm going to like lift weights. So the act of going and doing the lifting of the weights or whatever. And so it's important to know what you're training yourself for. So that's why I'm splitting it up this way. So a skill is more of like, also, you can always grow the skill more than it already is. But the skill is something you're already kind of competent at because you've built it up. And the training is where like you're in the mid stages of building that skill. And then you have desires. And desires are kind of like, fundamentally, what do you want in life? If you don't know, that's okay. But we all have desires. So it's kind of, I picture desires as kind of like the types of plants you want in your house or around your house. The skills are kind of like enhancing the soil of your space that you're going to live in. And then the talents are the type of soil that you're even building on to begin with. And then training is kind of, I kind of picture training like I would like water or something else, where it's like you're pouring water into the ground and then you're hoping that it enhances the soil in some way. Maybe you have like mulches and whatnot, and adding that water will allow for everything to decompose and make the soil richer. So, yeah. Okay. So that is the ground level. Now we're going to get to the underground, which is, again, my favorite level. For underground, we have the core pillars, which I'm kind of going with the deepest thing first. Core pillars are effectively something that internally has always been there with you and doesn't necessarily change. Like, you've tried to change things and it is. And that's it. So yeah. So the core pillars, these are things that are really hard to like initially figure out. But again, I just wanted to point out this is kind of important. And these are all important, but they're important for different reasons. We also have like personality and mannerisms. So just like, who are you as a person? Are you like someone who's known as like sassy or witty? Do you pride yourself on telling really funny jokes? Stuff like that. Then we have habits and routines. So again, this really could be anything. And I think it's important that I stress that just about anything could be a habit, good or bad, whatever you consider good or whatever you consider bad. And so when you're writing all of this stuff down, try not to pass judgment on yourself and just put it down so you're being honest with yourself. This is an honesty exercise for you. No one has to see this. So if you have a weird habit that like you're like, oh my gosh, it's embarrassing that I'm writing this down, that's okay. If you do a habit that you're ashamed of or frustrated that happens, or you're like, oh my gosh, or whatever, like, it's fine. It's not a big deal. You first have to identify before you can make changes. So that's why it's important to be honest. Same with routines. Like you could have a routine that's like you get up and you scroll TikTok for 5 hours, and that's your routine in the morning. It's like, okay. It's like, it is what it is, So don't try and downplay it. Just be honest. You can also, just to be clear, you can also have great habits and great routines. So I'm not saying that it's one size fits all there. Then we also have like unconscious actions and biases. So this is harder for you to discern. And oftentimes it's kind of like, because it's unconscious, you might question like, why did I do that? And if you question like, why did I do that? That might be an unconscious thing you were doing. Where you just kind of, it's melded so deeply into you that you don't even think about it. You just do the thing, whatever it is. Same with biases. We all have biases. It's just like, where are the biases? We often don't think about our biases, and we think we're impartial. Like, unfortunately, we're human. Well, okay, it's fortunate that we're humans, but like, I'm saying, unfortunately, with us being humans, it is something where, I don't know, like you can't really escape being biased in some form. And bias isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just being aware of it is important. So, then we have kind of perception of self, perception of others, and then how you view yourself. I think these are all... Oh, sorry. How you view others viewing yourself. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's important to know what you think of yourself, what you think of others, and what others think of you from your perspective. So yeah. Now, how do you make decisions? How you think? How you organize data? Again, these are all things where it's like, you really have to fundamentally like you can't make assumptions. you just write it down and then you can look at it. Because I'll tell you, we all think differently. And what I mean by that is like literally some people just think differently. An example, one of my friends thinks almost entirely in pictures. Like they occasionally have kind of words pop into their head, but it's like very rare. I do not think that way. I think by like speaking in my head. But I'm not going to get into the details there, but it's like there's a whole like spectrum of different ways people think. Some people think in pictures, some people think in words. You have like full on videos, like movie cinematic stuff. You have like actual like sounds. Some people will like not necessarily think in words, but in like songs, or like it gets wild with some of the things that I've like found out. So yeah. So I just want to make it kind of understood that however you think, it's totally fine. But just like write it down because it will help you later. And then kind of moving past this, it's like, what is your view on the world? How do you view the country you live in? How do you view the province or state you live in? The town, the city, the whatever, right? Because your worldview will paint a different picture on just everything. It's like you have the lens, and then if I was to put a cover where it's just like a red filter on the lens and everything is filtered in red, it's like, yeah, no matter how objective you are on everything else, if you're filtering it through a red filter, it doesn't, everything's going to be skewed with that red filter. So yeah. And then you have the last two that I've written down here, and that this is not an exhaustive list. This is just what I've came up with as like some important kind of guideposts. Anything else you want to write in here, you can write down like traumas and stuff like that. Or like, if you don't want to think of them as traumas, you can think of them as like struggles, or you could also do like accomplishments, all of that stuff you can just put in here. But yeah, so the last two, emotions and how you deal with them. And then I kind of want to mention a little bit about emotions. I'm trying to not make this too long, but I'm going to make it as long as I need to. So with emotions, I think it's important to understand that some people will filter their emotions. Some people will completely detach from their emotions. Others will bottle their emotions. And then some people have a really sophisticated way to deconstruct and like engage with their emotions fully. Regardless of where you're at on that, it's okay. It's just important to recognize like, where are we starting from? If you have like an example, if you are like someone who gets really angry really easily, that's okay. It just means that the way you regulate your emotions maybe comes out in a destructive way. Maybe you punch something because you get mad, or maybe you yell, or maybe you don't do anything externally and it's all internal. You're like, oh my gosh, I hate myself because I can't believe I let myself get so mad. And, no matter how it manifests, just understanding your mechanics right now. Because, and again, all of this, everything I've been explaining, this all can change. So the more honest you are now, the easier time you will have of changing the thing. This, again, is just surveying. And then last is personal belief on spirituality/religion. You do not have to be religious. You do not have to be spiritual. You, quite frankly, no matter what sort of beliefs you have, does not matter. This whole process is on the you that currently exists now and how you can go from your current state to a state that you would like to be in. That's all we're doing here. So now, spirituality, religion, all of that stuff do play a role in how you perceive things. So it's important to write them down if you do have any sort of feelings on those. And if you're like, oh my gosh, like, I hate religion, I think religion's dumb, those are all okay to write down too. Okay. So, we got all of that done. You took the time, you wrote down everything you could think of with all of these things. And if you haven't, go back and, you can finish the video, but like go back and kind of work on them. But yeah, so this is the foundation of you just need to survey who and what exists right now. Now, why is this important? It's important because, like I've mentioned before, if you don't do this, then you might try and build a building that maybe is already existing. Or you might lay a foundation down that has a bunch of cracks in it because you didn't look to see what already is there. So this is what a lot of people do throughout their lives. If they don't kind of understand themselves well enough and then systematically work on it, or, again, doesn't have to be systematic. It can be whatever way works best for you. And I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what is important, is you are building an understanding of yourself so that you can figure out the best way for you to change in the ways you want to. And this kind of touches on the next concept, which is autonomy. And I'll talk about that in the second video. But as a sneak preview, basically, now that you've kind of understood a foundation of where you stand in existence right now, you can then start figuring out where in your life you've handed your autonomy over to something or someone else. And then as you kind of understand that, you can take back your autonomy and make different decisions and change things to try and fit more of what you internally are looking for at a deeper level. But yeah, I'll go over that in more detail on the next video. So for now, again, taking it back, this is surveying. So survey yourself, take all the time you need, and when you feel like you're ready, check out the next video. Until then, thanks for listening, and I hope this helps. Even if you just watch this video and you don't watch any more, I believe that just knowing yourself is such a huge deal that you've already done something for yourself. Even if you haven't actually changed anything fundamentally, awareness is a huge deal. So, pat yourself on the back. Good job. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you in the next video. All right. Bye.